Hi everyone, my name is Rubina A Khan and welcome to the 17th edition of Rubina's Radar. Today I'm in conversation with a man who's India's voice par excellence on politics, business, film, food and travel. He's also one of India's best known editors, Vir Sanghvi. He's written and talked his way with erudition into a celebrated public existence since the 70s. In his new book, A Rude Life, which just released, he talks about his experiences with personalities such as the Gandhis, Modi, Vajpayee, Amitabh Bachchan, Dev Anand, Shah Rukh, to name a few, in his nonpareil, straightforward style. This book is also a masterclass in how to use words astutely to describe a moment, a person, or an entire government. And his life is anything but rude. Please welcome Mr. Vir Sanghvi, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Sanghvi.
Hello, Rubina. I'm just trying to adjust my phone so I get some kind of sense. It looks a little odd at the moment, doesn't it? I mean, maybe I need to go a little higher or something.
Yeah.
I'm very bad with technology, so don't worry. Okay, is this better? Can you see me properly now?
Yeah. Yes, perfectly.
And I can't hear you for some reason. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
You can, yeah? Let me try and adjust. Maybe it's my volume. Okay, say something.
Hi.
Okay, I can hear you. All right.
So,
Okay.
I've never talked about your work. I've always enjoyed it and loved it and admired it. But I'm not sure how do I start. Should I start with what I feel about the book or should I just go into the questions?
Start with what you feel about it. Give me enough time to adjust my position. Go ahead.
Okay. So I love the book and my late grandfather would have loved it too because he used to love reading your editorials in Sunday magazine, which is how I was introduced to a personality who had a very strong political voice, which was you. And I think that in this book, what I love the most is that it's very amusing because you take the light bits as well as the deep, maybe dark, maybe gray bits in a very succinct manner, which is your style.
Yeah, thank you.
And you've put a clear perspective on all the political terms and terminologies I've heard of and seen the headlines, but never really wanted to know much about because it was so dark. But now that you've written this book, everything throws new light into many words that we just knew of, but didn't know much about, but you've experienced firsthand. So I think this is a book for the bookshelves forever, for me.
I think you're being very kind, but thank you. I'm not objecting.
No, and I just want to lighten the mood now and tell you what amuses me is how you describe a very famous Bengali man, his accent actually, as the Oxford and the Hooghly. And how
it was a very odd accent, I have to say. I never quite figured it out.
And also how how Mr. Dev Anand clubbed you with his 56-year-old self when you were 23.
It's time for us young people, he said, to do something.
And you were very indignant because you're like, oh, I'm 23.
Yeah, but I mean, you will concede it's a bit odd. Like, if I try and pretend I'm the same age as you, you would consider this a bit odd. No, we're not really the same age.
Yes, indeed. But there was a lot of laughter and I loved it. It took me 2 days, but we are living in distracted times, that's why.
Yeah, I tried to make this as good-natured and as cheerful a book as I could, though that wasn't always possible because everyone's life is not really cheerful. But I tried to avoid making it the kind of book that had score settling or I fixed people or whatever. I just tried to make it as easy to read and as enjoyable as possible.
Oh, it's both. It's easy and very enjoyable, which is very, very hard to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to start with the book and the parts that, we'll get to you, the personality behind the book. So the opening chapter of the book, Who Does the Queen Go To?, is very funny, very humorous. And it also talks about your birth in London, which was no less than a royal affair, given you were delivered by the Queen's doctor. Do you want to tell everybody how that came to be? Because I think that's something everyone should know. And, they should really read it more. But it would be funnier if you said it.
Okay. It happened like this. My mother married my father relatively late in life. In her generation, people got married at the age of 18 or 19. And then she had 2 miscarriages. And my grandfather, who was actually a very rich Gujarati shade from Ahmedabad, got very worried and felt that she would not have a child. So after the second miscarriage, when she got pregnant again, he said to her, "Don't have it in India, go to London." So she said, "But I don't know any doctors in London. I don't know anything in London. Why would I go to?" So he said, "Oh, it can't be difficult to find a doctor." So she said, "Yeah, I mean, they're in Ahmedabad. How is she going to find a doctor in London?" And he said, "Who does the Queen go to?" So she said, "Queen?" He said, "Queen of England." So she figured it out. She thought about it. They called people and they found this guy. He was a guy called, I think, Sir William Gillett, who had delivered Prince Charles and various other people. And they went off to London without an appointment with Sir William. They phoned his chambers and said, "Can we come and see Sir William?" And he was, I think, freaked out, intrigued by the strange Indian couple who had turned up and demanded he do the delivery. But he was, from all accounts, a very nice man, from what my mother told me. Not in the slightest bit snobbish about who they were and who the Queen had been or was. And he was a perfect doctor, and he delivered me.
Well, thank God for that
Well,
you came
thank
to
you.
be. And it's not less than a royal journey that you've led in prime ministers' homes and private jets and all of that as a writer, and of course your school. So we'll get to your no. First, my question was: is your royal birth the most British thing about you?
No, I mean, I don't think that even that is very British about me, because my parents were a pair of Gujaratis who were fortunate that my mother's father had the money to send them to London. But there was no sense in which I was British that way. Agreed, I was born in London, but I was very proudly Indian. They made sure I got an Indian passport, and I've never given up my Indian passport since then.
Yes. So England's been good to you. You were even paid to go and study at the University of Oxford at Brasenose. So you credit the college for teaching you how to think in your book.
Yes.
How so?
I think what tends to happen with the Indian educational system is you're given huge textbooks and told to study them, and the questions are usually quite boring, and you're meant to write long, boring essays. The point of the Oxford system, I don't think, was the lectures, though you get lectures from really famous and well-known people who are quite eminent in their own way. But it was the tutorial system. The way a tutorial system worked was you went in and saw a tutor. In the beginning, there might be two of you and the tutor, but after a while, it becomes just you and the tutor. The tutor is this brilliant guy. He wants to discuss the subject. Say, why did Lenin lead the revolution in Russia? I mean, I'm making that up. It's a stupid question, but something like that. He gives you a reading list. You go away and you read all of that, and then you come back and you say to him, "I've written an essay," and he says, "Read it out." And you read it out and you say, "I believe that Lenin was actually there at the right time. Kerensky had failed. There was so much hatred of Tsarist Russia." And he said, "Crap, that's nonsense." And then he proceeds to tear your essay apart, and you have to defend your views against him. So when somebody of that intellect does that, you learn how to think, because you really have no choice. You have to deconstruct his arguments. You have to defend your case. Even if he actually agrees with everything you said, he is obliged, as part of his job description, to disagree with you, to see how much you can defend your arguments. For me, that's real education.
So in that light, we could say that you've taught a lot of Indians how to write.
I don't think so.
I really
certainly don't think so at all.
I've been inspired over the years. Inspiration is as good as
I don't think people read me to learn how to write or whatever. They read me, and if they like the content and they enjoy it, then they enjoy it. But if they don't like the content, that's it. But even if they enjoy it, I don't think anybody tries to write like me or anything. You give me too much credit.
No, I really think you inspire a lot of people. I mean, it's okay. We won't get into the modesty and the modesty battle, but yes.
Being realistic.
So, also, you were the first lifestyle journalist, Vir. You were the one who was, reporting on politics, but also, laterally going into, wine and food. And in the early stages, just restaurants.
Let's be honest. Around the time Bombay came out, I think a month after that, a magazine called Society came out, which was edited by Shobha Kilachandra. She then was Shobha there. She now is, who'd been a very successful editor of Stardust, had done many light columns. And while Bombay was about Bombay and there was some element of lifestyle on it, Society was, I think they originally wanted to call it High Society till somebody showed Nari Hira, the owner, a hardcore porn magazine called High Society in America, and he quickly changed the name to Society. But that was intended to be about lifestyles of the rich and famous. So they were way ahead of me. I can't take any credit for that.
I see. So let me ask you a question you were asked at Brasenose. Are you a Keynesian or a monetarist? Today.
Yeah, basically, I'm an idiot. I really had no idea. When you go for these interviews, they ask you all these pompous questions like, are you a Keynesian or a monetarist?
Yeah, it's really pompous.
And many people fall into this trap and they say, no, I am a Keynesian. And then they proceed to demolish Keynesianism and ask you to defend it. Or if you take the Milton Friedman view and say you're a monetarist, they destroy that view also. So the trick is to not fall into that trap. So when they ask me, are you a monetarist or a Keynesian? I said, I really am neither. I'm hoping to come to Oxford and find out, which I think made them look very disappointed. They went for something else.
Yeah, that was really clever to get out of that. Like, I will discover it after you teach me. So, I like the titles of your chapters, as you know.
I can't take credit for them.
I wanted to know how did they come
All
about?
the chapters were given by my wife Seema. So that's
oh my God! Please tell her.
I will always be grateful to her for that.
Pandit here, I cannot hear. I've not taken my bath.
Yeah, that's all her. Actually.
A vampire. My bravo, Seema. I mean, it's a brilliant stroke in the book. I love the chapter titles.
Thank you so much.
So then there is a very interesting chapter which is about you, which is you have become very fat. That's the name of the chapter. And that is because Bal Thackeray and you happened to meet up, and you told him something to the effect that he hasn't changed since the day you met, which is about 20 years of knowing him. And he says, well, you've become very fat. Now, I would like to think if he said that today, it would be the biggest fat shaming situation in India. I mean, it would make headlines for days.
I don't know if you knew Bal Thackeray, but if you told him that you are a fat shamer, I think that would be the least of the things that he's been accused of. He was accused of much worse and really couldn't give a monkey's.
That's true. Actually, that's true. Okay, so how long did it take for you to write the book? I believe you wrote it last year in the lockdown.
Yeah, I think about 3 months or so. The chapters are all about 2,000 words or so. So my target was to write a chapter a day. Sometimes if the words were coming, I did 2 chapters. There are about 61 chapters. Yes. So it took about 30-35 days of writing or less, but I didn't write every day. So probably about 3 months.
Oh, not bad. Superb. But who am I talking to, of course? So Indian commentators, especially in politics, they tend to fulminate or they're too polemical. But the clarity of thought in your arguments and points of view is remarkable. How so? How are you so crystal clear and calm?
That's like one of those "you are so wonderful, how so" questions. How can I even possibly begin to answer that? I try and write the best that I can, but I am no one to pass judgment on other Indian political commentators and say they fulminate and they are not clear in their thoughts. You may very well say that, but all I can say is I try and do the best I can.
So, whose style of journalism do you like in, maybe the past, maybe now? It could be anybody in the world.
Oh gosh. I was very influenced by the British press. I was very influenced by the way in which they wrote editorials, by the way in which they wrote political columns. I found the American press a little too po-faced. It took itself more seriously than the British press. So, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you should take yourself more seriously. But as far as I was concerned, I liked the irreverence of the British press. And that was probably the greatest influence on me.
Wonderful. So we come to you changing the language of Hindustan Times from Punjabi English.
Yeah.
Wherein they, I think it's the gift that keeps on giving is the one statement, which is the Delhi. So can you please describe, because you live in the Delhi.
But anybody who's lived in Delhi will know that people talk like that. They say, because you keep telling people that if you want to write well, don't use big words, write like you talk. And then you meet these guys, you say, well, actually, don't write like you talk. Because they would say in conversations things like, the monsoon will have reached the Delhi. Now, if you were to write that in newspapers, there's a problem.
So how did you restructure the way the team worked after? And then the English
Well, it was difficult because often many of these people who wrote the diary had been there for quite a long time, and it was extremely unlikely that they were going to change. And right, so you tried. You don't want to sack anybody. You tried to find other things for them to do, and then you tried to hire people who were better and at least spoke the language.
Yeah. So, the worst of it is that I have a breaking news, It's also a chapter in your book.
But that is a true story. We did this program with India Today, which was before the TV Today, Headlines Today, Aaj channels were all started. And we did this in a collaboration with Doordarshan, it was an election program. And they told us that, news will break in the middle of the election and you will have to interrupt the program and you will have to give this breaking news. No problem at all. And we did these rehearsals. And the Doordarshan producer kept shouting in my ear, there is a breaking news. There is a breaking news. So fine. You therefore wait for him to tell you what the breaking news is. So when we stopped part of the rehearsal, he came to me and said, I told you there was a breaking news. You did nothing. So I said, but you didn't tell me what the breaking news was. No? So he said, how can I tell you? This is only a rehearsal. There is no breaking news. You can't possibly argue with that. So I just gave up.
Yeah. So when people converse with you in wrong English, like, maybe, I don't know in what setting, but I'm sure in the political setting, there must have been lots of wrong grammatical usages. Do you correct them?
But that doesn't worry me. I mean, I'm not one of those people who believes that Indians should be required to speak good English or that there is a problem if they speak bad English. I think there's a problem if you are correcting people's copy in an English language newspaper and your own English is not good. So yes, there is a problem because good English is part of your job description. But
Indeed.
Otherwise, in social life, you meet people and they have strange accents and they speak ungrammatical English. My attitude is always, hey, why should they speak English? It's not our language. If I tried speaking Hindi or tried writing in Hindi, I'm sure I would make many more grammatical errors than they do in English. So when it comes to stuff like that, I try not to be judgmental.
But why are you uncomfortable speaking or, speaking in Hindi? You say so yourself. But is it because you grew up speaking
Gujarati? I'm a Gujarati. As far as I'm concerned, Hindi is a foreign language. It doesn't come naturally to me.
I see.
It's a natural language. I do my best, but I think in Gujarati or I think in English. I don't really think in Hindi. And it's very difficult to be easily conversational in a language that you don't think in.
So I find this very unusual that you wrote 2 reviews, the aliases. The alias is fine, but the names are so, can I say this? It's like a little moronic. Vikas Sinha. I mean, who came up with this name? For your class of writing,
it was Vikram Sinha, not Vikas Sinha.
Oh, sorry.
B, Vikram Sinha demands an apology. How dare you call his name moronic?
I apologize profusely.
Yeah, right.
I made an error. I knew I'm going to fumble today on something or the other. I got the name wrong. And of course, Grand Fromage. I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Yeah, that's correct.
Which is a bit,
I think you're better with French words than you are with Indian names.
No. I don't know how I got Vikas instead of Vikram. Sorry. Yeah. So you came up with these names?
Yeah, I did. I mean, the idea with Grand Fromage was like an in-joke. But the idea with the others, Vijay, Sani, Vikram Sinha, was to stick to the VS.
Yes.
So that is the same initial. So we just thought of many variations along VS. Grand Fromage was, if you're editor of the Hindustan Times and you write an article under an alias and you call yourself, say, Sanjay Khanna or whatever, there's a problem. It seems you're hiding your name. But if you use an obviously jokey nom de plume, something like Grand Fromage, it's clear that you don't want to sign your name, but you're quite happy to be jokey about it. So, which is why we did that.
I see. Good to know. So you say you still write in longhand, but then how do you work around, Instagram, Twitter, and the rest of it?
No, WhatsApp? I can do tweets. When my articles are typed and come back to me. I often add paras. I often correct them, and I do all of that on a keyboard. So it's not that I can't use a keyboard, but it's just that I can't think that well on a keyboard. I think better when I'm writing longhand.
Oh, that's something very unusual to hear. So you're not a Luddite. You're not a complete Luddite. You're partial Luddite.
I am a Luddite in some respects, but I'm also, I think, quick to embrace new technology. I went on to television before most print journalists did. I started my own website, I think, before most journalists did. So yeah, I'm
Yeah,
curiously old-fashioned in some ways, but quite on the ball in others.
indeed. So, India is still a predominantly newspaper reading country. How long do you
Yeah.
see the print affair continuing in our country?
I don't think print as a genre will die. I think it will shrink, and I think we will live in a multimedia world. Certainly, newspapers will lose some of their influence. But what you see abroad, we've seen, look at New York, for instance. The New York Times has political influence, which is as much as it's ever been. Even though people don't necessarily read the physical paper, they read the online editions. I think our problem in India is that the online editions of newspapers are not very exciting or very good. So either it's the print edition of the newspaper or you go on to other media websites. So I think that's where we've lost out.
So, this is a question on the Indian press, which is both hard and soft news. Do you think the Indian press largely is lazy now, living off PR feeds predominantly? And I don't mean everyone by that, obviously. I feel that they seem to love the perks more than the work that goes on into the job. Do you think there's a sense of laziness about the Indian press?
No, look, I am nobody to pass judgment on other journalists, and I would have a hell of a lot of nerve to call them lazy. It is true that when I started out in journalism, there wasn't a huge PR industry. For instance, if I wanted to, and this I'm now talking about the last about up to about 2009, 2010 at least, that if you wanted to interview a star or whatever, you got in touch and the star gave you an interview. Now the PR machinery controls stars. They'll only give you an interview if there's a film to promote or there's something. The interview will go through the PR person. The PR person will sit like a pest through the interview. The PR person will try and stop the star from speaking, will complain, which is why most celebrity interviews and certainly film interviews are usually mindless because you have the person
Yeah.
say, what did this role mean to you? And the star says to this person what she has said or he has said for the last 15, 20. And then they say, do you think the film will do well? And then the star says the director is genius. And this is the one I'm really hoping for. Then they will ask you, which is your best role? And she said, let me think. And so this kind of idiotic and moronic, what to use your word, exercise goes on, fueled by the PR industry. So to the extent that the PR industry controls everything, I have no problems with that. But I'm not going to call other journalists lazy.
All right, fair. So, the Modi administration is often accused of making the media redundant in its governance.
Yeah.
Do you think that the Indian press has killed its own relevance by running anything and everything without corroborations or verifying facts in a bid to, gain ratings and number crunching? I mean, I call it headline journalism. And so, because of that, maybe the Modi government, decided early on that, okay, we don't need to feed the press. We'll feed the public directly with whatever we have to say.
Yeah, I mean, there are many elements to that question. Let's take them one by one. Is the Modi government using other means to communicate with the electorate? Yes. Is it because of social media that they feel they're able to get their message across and not worry so much about mainstream media? Yes. Do they prefer social media? Yes, because whatever they say is carried without any fact checking or any attempt at editing. Are they nervous about what newspapers or television might say if they are not controlled? Yes. Does this lead to some element of control or attempted control and some element of fear on the part of news media? Yes. Would this have happened anyhow? No, I don't think so. I think this government is different in its attitude to the media from other people. Is there a lot of irresponsibility in the media? Are things printed without checking? Yes, but that's always been so. Is there a desire now to seem more sensationalistic and more clickbaity? Yes, I think whenever you have a crisis, when people are struggling to survive, the first thing that goes out the window is your ethical standard. You try and do things that are much more dubious in very nature. For instance, if I give you a sensational story, if I say, for instance, that Rubina Khan has learned how to fly, If you were to call Rubina Khan and say, sorry, do you fly? You would say, don't be ridiculous. Of course I don't fly, I'm a normal person. So they won't call you. They'll just run the story, and the next day when you say, I don't fly, why are you saying this? They'll say, okay, we'll carry your side of the story. So that, I think, is a problem.
So who do you think is likely to be PM Modi's successor from the BJP? I'm assuming it will be from the BJP.
I think Mr. Modi will go on forever. Why are you talking about his successor? Why do you...
No, of course we know it's indefinite, but in the spectrum of, come on, you have written about 12 sitting prime ministers. I mean,
yeah, but
when
I was writing about sitting prime minister, I wasn't thinking about his successor. So I have no idea who will succeed Mr. Modi. It seems to me, and I think it seems to Mr. Modi also, that he will go on forever.
Right. So if you sat down to interview him today, what would be the one question, the burning question you would like to ask him?
Why are you so allergic to criticism? Why is there an atmosphere of fear in the media? Why don't you come out, talk to people, and reassure them that you're well? Because I know them earlier, and he was very different. That you're still the same person, and that you welcome criticism. You
did say in your book that he was very jovial and was humorous.
I've been on shows with him. People have attacked him, have attacked the government, and he's responded. He said things. So he wasn't always like this.
But you still think the charisma that he had then is paramount today? His charisma that you sense?
I think his charisma has actually increased. He was likable then. Today he's respected, admired, feared among his supporters. It's a different kind of charisma, and you may like him, you may not like him, but it's foolish to deny that he's by a long way the most popular politician in India.
Wow. So, like I said, you've written about so many prime ministers. India has only had 17 prime ministers, Mr. Modi being the 17th. That's a lot of prime ministers. Did you meet all the sitting prime ministers? The 12?
Gosh, no, I'm trying to think. I never met Indira Gandhi.
I met that was her first term.
I met Rajiv Gandhi. I met VP Singh. I met Chandrasekhar. I met Narasimha Rao. I met Vajpayee. I met Deve Gowda. I met Gujarat. Who comes after Gujarat?
Manmohan.
It was Vajpayee again. Then Manmohan Singh. And that's only about 9. How you got 11? Who have I forgotten?
No. You started working around that time.
Yeah, but I've only met about 8 or so of them.
Did you ever meet Murad? You did meet Murad.
Meet who?
Murajri Desai.
Yeah, I met Murajri many times.
I think that's.
But I suppose he counts.
Very humorous, very.
But I met him after he ceased to be prime minister. So, which is why I'm not including Mr. Modi, because I met him before he became prime minister.
Right. The suitcase
I'm only including the ones I met when they were prime minister.
I see. Okay. So now I'm going to go into some very light banter with you. So what did you drink at the PM residence? Tea or coffee?
At the PM residence, always tea. I don't drink Nescafe, and that's all they serve.
I see. And did you ever
all government offices in North India, South India, they understand their coffee are instant coffee places. So if they offer you coffee, always say no.
I see. And did you ever meet the cooks there in the kitchens?
No, I mean, it was not like I was given free run of the house and I could drop in and chat to everybody. No, sadly, no.
No, because that question probably came because you spent some Diwalis at Mr. Vajpayee in his home when he was a sitting prime minister. So I'm just assuming.
No, when you go to somebody's house for a Diwali party, which is held in the lawns, you don't dart in and interrogate the cook. I didn't really talk about it.
Okay. So, how was it celebrating Diwali, knowing that you are celebrating with the Prime Minister of India? And that's a big thing.
Actually, the whole point of it was that you didn't feel you were the Prime Minister of India. The point about Vajpayee is that you felt you'd gone over to a friend's house and they were celebrating Diwali. They were completely non-political at home. No politics was discussed. They were completely without arrogance or any pretension. Vajpayee was just like the elderly father of a friend of yours. He was benevolent. He didn't say that much. When he did, he talked nicely. You didn't have that whole thing of, this is the Prime Minister and you should be careful.
So when you said namaste, was there a pause? Those 5-minute long pauses when he would come back with a namaste, or was he quick with the greetings?
I think there was a pause pretty much whatever you said to him. I think
So
this is just his
so
way
you're
of
going
talking.
namaste and
I
you're
don't
waiting.
know, now, I wrote this at the time, but now I find when I have to remember even the simplest word, sometimes it takes me a minute, well, not a minute, I'm exaggerating, at least a few seconds to remember names of people, names of places. So perhaps it's just age, and perhaps it was insensitive of me not to have realized that.
Okay. So you've possibly interviewed every powerful person in the country. Is there anyone you haven't and would have liked to?
In this crowd, no, there are many powerful people in this crowd I have never interviewed. I have never met Amit Shah, for instance, who is the world's second most powerful Gujarati, but I have never met him.
Oh, I like that term. Second most powerful Gujarati, because the first is Mr. Modi.
Correct. First is Mr. Modi. I mean, basically,
I'm glad I
Gujarati
deciphered
ruled
that
India, right?
one.
What?
I said, I'm glad I deciphered that.
Yeah. This is
So
Gujarati Raj.
Yes. So who is your favorite politician in the world?
Gosh, no, I don't have favorite politicians. I think journalists are not supposed to have favorite politicians. We are supposed to treat, there is a very famous quote from Jeremy Paxman, who is a famous British journalist and television interviewer, which is that when you go for an interview and a politician starts answering questions, the one question you must always keep in your mind is, why is that, quoting exactly, why is this lying bastard lying to me? Now, I think that's much too harsh a view of politics, so I don't have it, but I just think it's not a great idea to have favorite politicians.
Yeah. Like lots of people ask me about who's your favorite film star. I always say I don't have any. So I guess I should have seen that coming.
That's the right thing to say.
So you lived in
could say, why is this lying bastard making such bad movies? You could say, you could say things like that.
Yeah, I can get away with it also. So you've lived in Bombay, Calcutta, and Delhi. Which city shaped your political views, and what did you learn from each?
Well, Bombay is home. So the cosmopolitan character of Bombay is, I think, something that shaped my views. Calcutta was a very, very different city. And though I grew to love it, what it reminded me of, and I think I needed reminding, as does everybody who lives in Mumbai, is that Bombay or stroke Mumbai is not India. If you think that India is anything like Bombay, then you have a surprise. It's like New York is not America. So if you go to New York and think you understand America, you'll never understand, for instance, why Donald Trump won an election. You have to go elsewhere in America, and chiefly into middle and southern America, into the smaller towns. I think that's true of India as well. And Delhi, I think, obviously shaped my political views because I was at the center of the action.
Right. So do all of them feel like home to you, or is Delhi home?
No, Bombay is home. Delhi is home now. Calcutta, I love, but no, it doesn't feel like home.
So do you count on anyone other than yourself? Because you said that you stopped doing that when you were 15, and that's when your father passed away.
Yeah, I think I count on my wife for most things. Like, for instance, she set up this Insta Live. I'm going to touch wood.
Thank you, Seema.
I think one measure of a successful relationship is if you feel you can depend on somebody. And touch wood, I think I have that.
Oh, I love that. I love the last chapter in your book anyway. You've described all your major relationships so very beautifully. It's actually very emotional, and I think it just hits in the heart. So, did you read your father's columns, who had very extreme views and things, as you already mentioned in the book?
No, I actually haven't. I haven't read anything he wrote recently, but I did. I mean, there was a phase when Bombay in the 80s when I came across some stuff that he'd written, and it was actually frightening. Though I'd never read the stuff, how much like him I write. So obviously, there's some genetic connection there.
Definitely. I also think that you observed Indian politics through his friends and the people he met.
Possibly, yeah. But I mean, that's irrelevant because his friends were all these progressives and secularists and all that, which is not really the ideal prism to understand today's politics through.
So, are you still in touch with R.V. Pandit?
Yes, I am indeed. Yeah. He lives in Bangalore now. He's more or less retired.
So, any assignment that changed your world in your career? Like, changed the course of your thinking, your life, or a job? Maybe.
I don't think there was a certain turning point or a eureka moment, but we are all the sum of our experiences. So I think each assignment in some way contributed to make me what I am.
What is the last book that you've read? Or a book that you want to read?
I'm currently reading two books. I'm reading a book called Chefs, Drugs and Rock and Roll, which is about American chefs and the growth of the American chef as an icon. And I'm also reading a novel called The Cellist by a thriller writer, a spy writer called Daniel Silva.
Wonderful.
Neither of them, I have to tell you, is very elevating. So if you were hoping that I would give you some great work of modern fiction.
No. This is what I thrive on.
I don't actually read that much fiction at all.
No. I don't want to hear about biographies and all of those things. So no. But I have to tell you,
the last biography I read, which I just finished, is not a biography that will interest most people. It's the biography, the autobiography of the chef Jean-Georges Vongerichten.
I see.
So it's clearly a minority interest.
What's the most Indian thing about you?
Me? I mean, everything is Indian about me.
No, the most
what is not Indian about me?
Okay, मैं हिंदी में पूछूंगी. बहुत ही देसी चीज क्या है?
सब कुछ. I am Indian. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, say one sentence in full Hindi.
बिल्कुल नहीं. I'm not a performing monkey. Why should I do stuff like that?
Okay. Well, touche to that. I deserve that. What is one thing that irks you the most?
People who don't have concern for other people, people who are selfish. And this shows itself in many different ways. If you arrive 20 minutes late for a meeting, it doesn't mean that you're unpunctual. It means that you have no respect for the time of the people you've given a meeting to. If you're rude to waiters, that means you think that you can be rude to people who can't hit back. So that kind of lack of concern for other people probably irks me the most.
So, just a couple more quick questions, and I'm going to get into the food business. So, what can you not resist in life?
I can actually resist anything except for temptation.
Oh, isn't that something Oscar Wilde said?
It is very good, well spotted. Yes, absolutely. It's, I think, from the importance of being honest. I can resist anything but temptation.
Right. It's like the other one. I have very simple taste in life. I'm easily satisfied with the best.
I'm easily satisfied?
With the best.
With the best. I mean, so, there are such immortal lines from Oscar Wilde. No?
Really. Some of them are, his lines are really like for the ages, some of them.
And I mean, a lot of it is meant to be satirical. Like, I think in The Importance of Being Earnest again, one person says to the other, well, I guess you could call me blunt, but when I see a spade, I call it a spade. And the other person, oh, really? I have never seen a spade. Obviously, we move in vastly different circles. So, I mean, I think he was sending up those people. It was not meant to be a funny thing.
Yeah. When are you your happiest?
When am I at happiest? When I'm at home.
Wonderful. So you write about not having a business bone in your body, but the Easy Diner app and the culinary culture prove that you have a muscle or two for business too.
No. All the business part of Easy Diner is done by Kapil Chopra, my partner.
And obviously the culture company where you're doing all the awards.
Culinary culture so far, I'm only the executive chairman. To the extent that there's anything involving business, that's handled by Everstone, who are part of the owners, and by my son Raj, who's the CEO. I'm not involved in that.
I think in India, every chef wants to be written about by you. That's the general feeling I get everywhere I go.
This is the view from Dubai. It's not actually true in India.
What nonsense? What Dubai? This is a view from India.
Sitting in Dubai and you're passing judgments on these hapless chefs in India. They don't really.
But everyone tells me
they don't really care that much.
They do. They don't just tell you. They do care. Everyone says that. And the whole world can review them, but they want Vir Sanghvi to say what he thought of their food. I'm telling you. You're far too modest.
You're vastly over-exaggerating my importance.
Oh my God, I'm so not. But I was told that I could easily embarrass you. I think I'm doing just that. I'm very sorry. But it's inadvertent because I really believe these things. I really do.
Thank you. I'm very glad you believe them, but they're not right. They're not.
Okay, this is my last question. The 5 things one must eat, drink, and do. You can pick the city. The 3 that you've lived in, either Bombay, Delhi, or Calcutta.
All right. What should you eat in Mumbai? You should eat the local Marathi food. I think one of the great tragedies of people who come to Bombay is that we forget that Maharashtra has one of these great cuisines that never gets noticed. Even in Mumbai, there are very few Maharashtrian restaurants. And even when the food of Maharashtra is served, like for instance, people who go to Trishna and all of these places don't realize that Malwani food is basically a kind of Maharashtrian food. Right? So I think if you come to Mumbai, you must appreciate the food of the Maharashtrian community. You must eat Bhel Puri. Bhel Puri is Mumbai's gift to the world. It was invented in Mumbai. As you know, chaat all over India was spread by people from UP and Bihar who came and brought their chaat. To the extent that even now you go to Chowpatty, the Bhel Puri wala will be called Bhaiya by everybody because it does not mean man who sells milk or water. It's just a term of respect for people who came from UP. But Bhel Puri was not something they brought. They brought it to Mumbai, and the city's Gujarati community took their methods and their chaat and invented Bhel Puri. So it, in my view, not only is it the ultimate Mumbai dish, it is also the greatest Gujarati dish ever invented.
Right. So this is what you should read in Bombay. Now, everyone who's been listening, this is the book. You have to sign it whenever we meet next.
All right.
And thank you so much for your time, most importantly, because I know the book.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
No. It is just my honor because honestly, you know how I feel about your work and what it does to read your work. And honestly, I read only your byline, whatever you may write. Honestly.
Well, no wonder you overemphasize my importance and you're coming to this from a skewered perspective.
Perhaps it is a possibility. But I also read other things. But I don't like to miss what you write. So I'm very grateful and thank you. And this was my first interview with a person that I truly admire very, very much. So thank you. Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you for. I've seen the other people you've done. It's a very illustrious lineup. So I'm very honored. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Thank you. Bye, Vir. Have a great evening. And see you in person soon, I hope. Yes. Okay.